Good morning. My name is John Wilhelm, and I'm principal at Hamilton High School. And on behalf of Superintendent Mr. Tony Orr and our Board of Education, I want to welcome you to Big Blue and thank you for attending our fall community breakfast. As we start, as usual at Hamilton High School and Hamilton City events, we like to start with our Pledge of Allegiance. So joining us today and leading us in the pledge is going to be Tyler Rose. Presenting the national colors is Charles Ferris. Presenting the Navy colors is Cadet Deontay Tipton. And our escort rifles are done by Gage Mann and Elizabeth DeBoer.
Order. Arms. Right. Face. Present. Colors. Ready. Cut.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Ready. Cut. Color guard. All out.
Thank you, Cadets Rose, Ferris, Tipton, Mann, and DeBoer. You may now be seated. They're pretty impressive, aren't they? So, our cadets in our NJROTC unit, they're getting ready for their fall trip this year. They're going to the Naval Station in Norfolk, Virginia. So we wish them well. And of course, hopefully this year we have our fourth consecutive trip to Pensacola, Florida for nationals. Very proud of that program. Of course, none of these things at Hamilton High School would be possible without the support of our Board of Education, who recognizes the importance of fine arts as well as military and careers. And I'd like to recognize the board members who are in attendance today. First, we have our board president, Mr. Steve Isgro. Thank you, Mr. Isgro. And a special recognition, Dr. Glenn Stitzinger is here. Dr. Glenn. There he is. And I did want to mention that Dr. Stitzinger is retiring after 32 years of service to the Hamilton City School District Board of Education and to the Hamilton community. So thank you, Dr. Stitzinger. Congratulations. We have a rejuvenation of civic engagement from our youth. So joining us at our tables today, we have members of the Hamilton High School Junior State of America. JSA's motto is Be the People. And after you hear our students speak and all the great things that they are doing in the building and the community, you're going to believe the same as I do, that they are the people. They are the people who will lead the community to a better future, and not only because their love of the school and the democratic process, but also the love of the community, the city of Hamilton. And our students truly appreciate all the great things that are going on in this city. Additionally, to our adults here, you'll have an opportunity to speak with our students at your tables during the student engagement process. Feel free, when the time comes, to have quality conversations with our youngsters. Not only we hope that you're learning about things that go on in Hamilton High School, but we want them to learn from you and hear about your experiences within the city and job, professions. This is a very important time in their lives. Many of these students are juniors and seniors, and they'll be making decisions about their future. And it always helps to hear from adults in the community. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our two co-presidents, Riley Johnson and Fiona Andrews. Riley and Fiona.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone hear me? Yeah? Perfect. So my name is Riley Johnson, and I'm co-chapter president of the Hamilton High chapter of JSA. This is Fiona Andrews. She's my other co-chapter president, and we're just going to talk to you a little bit about our club and what we do. So what is JSA? JSA stands for the Junior State of America, and we're a national organization that recently established in our high school just last year. JSA is nonprofit and nonpartisan, and our mission is to provide civic education to young people and promote activism in our community. We reach these goals by doing things like debates and thought talks, listening to keynote speakers, and attending 3 big conventions in the year. Fall State, which is just this Saturday in Columbus. We've got Winter Congress in Washington, D.C., and we also have Spring State in Cincinnati. So JSA is a safe space for everyone to share their opinions respectfully and to learn more about the political things happening around them. Students that participate in JSA gain valuable experience and preparation for becoming an active member of American democracy, which is so important, especially in our times. This year, Hamilton High JSA will be attending 2 of our 3 big conventions, where we'll meet other civically engaged peers and discuss our beliefs on a broad range of issues. The first of these conventions, as I mentioned, is this Saturday, which is why 20 high schoolers will be waking up early on a weekend. Doesn't happen very often. And we're very excited to go to Columbus and meet a whole bunch of people that care just as much about government as we do. So the Hamilton High chapter of JSA, though we're only a year old, has its own slogan to represent our goals and beliefs in the city. That slogan is debate, engage, and govern. And I'd like to allow Fiona to talk about that first point, debate.
One of the major facets of JSA is debating. As a nonpartisan group, JSA members have the opportunity to debate at the chapter and state level at both conservative and liberal debate resolutions. Topics include global, national, and local concerns and can range from social, educational issues to economic, foreign, and constitutional policy. To prepare for debates at our state conventions, like our upcoming Fall State this Saturday, we practice during our chapter meetings. By debating various topics, we're not only strengthening our communication abilities, but also learning about these topics and diving deeper into the material than students would in a normal classroom setting. But why is this? It's because in order to debate and support our position fully, we must be educated on the topic and be aware of each perspective. This is just one example of how we aim to prepare our students in civil discourse. Now back to Riley for engagement.
So engagement in this context means what we do in our city and in our community. So a key part of JSA is activism, whether political or just volunteering. Students participate in activism events around Ohio, like helping the community garden, volunteering at a free store, or collecting for the Freedom Schools. Activism fairs allow students to engage with local businesses and political organizations. This encourages students to become more civically engaged, which is our buzzword in JSA, and become active participants in their communities. We also participate in a lot of activism initiatives just within our community and city. So the Hamilton High chapter of JSA, as I mentioned, is just over a year old, but we already do a lot. So, for example, last year, Hamilton High JSA hosted a Fight Apathy Week, which is a national campaign to get students and teachers talking about what we believe in. So students would receive a sticker during lunch in the cafeteria, and it said, "This I believe," or "I believe that." And students could write anything from gun control to a stronger border to Santa Claus. And basically, kids just talked about what they believed in, and with no pressure, but also it started conversations. Another event that JSA hosted this year at Hamilton High was a candidate forum, which I know at least some of you attended and maybe participated in. It was a town hall meeting that was open to the public. It happened a little over 2 weeks ago, and 7 of our 8 city council and mayoral candidates did come and participate in a forum. So we're very proud of that event, and that's just a little taste of the activism that we do in the Junior State of America. The next word is govern.
The Junior State of America is a national organization, and we're entirely student-run, meaning that all of our administration is done by student volunteers. Every spring, a governor, lieutenant governor, and 2 mayors are elected by our state members across our Ohio River Valley state. Over the summer, dozens of students then apply and are appointed to our state cabinet, in departments from debate to expansion to fundraising. Riley, Sarah, Ashley, Dershie, Alias, and I all hold positions in our state cabinet this year. This past September, we attended CabCon, during which we broke into our respective departments and worked on planning all of this year's state activities, initiatives, and convention ideas. Through these experiences, we are strengthening our leadership skills. We are not only learning how to write formal emails, participate in conference calls, but we're also collaborating with our peers across the Midwest. So again, my name is Fiona Andrews, and this is my co-chapter president, Riley Johnson. And we want to thank you for your attention. If you take anything away from our presentation, it's that we're Hamilton High, Junior State of America, and we're in it to debate, engage, and govern.
And I want to thank all of you for your participation in the discussion. I hope everyone gained some insight from everyone at their table over these questions. And again, my name is Ashley Shawpacher. I'm the financial advisor for JSA, and thank you all for coming today.
And now I have the great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Mike Dingledine is a registered architect in his 33rd year of practice in Hamilton, Ohio, and holds a master's degree in architecture from Miami University. Mike, along with his wife Sydney, co-founded Community Design Alliance in 2012 with the goal of continuing a community-based architecture, design, and planning firm in a downtown Hamilton storefront. CDA strives to support and inspire the revitalization of the city of Hamilton through creative partnering and design solutions. Mike is also the executive director of the Hamilton Core Fund, managing many community revitalization projects supported by significant investments from the U.S. Bank, First Financial Bank, the Hamilton Community Foundation, and the City of Hamilton. Mike is a fourth-generation Hamiltonian and a father of fifth-generation's daughters, Emma and Isabel Dingledine, who are seniors at Hamilton High School. Without further ado, Mike Dingledine.
Good morning. I'm wondering when the threshold of you getting tired of hearing from me is going to be reached here, but as long as it hasn't been, I'm happy to do this. I've spent some time in the last couple of years talking about Hamilton's resurgence and how I sort of look back and label it with different things that we've done that were either brilliant or lucky or both. And I've talked about our all-hands-on-deck approach that Joshua Smith leads from the city. I've talked about our history and our industrial wealth that built Hamilton and left us with great assets that we're working with today. And then most recently at Rotary in September, I talked about how our quality of life focus, I think, was a really, really good decision in terms of where we're headed. And today I want to talk about our diversity as a city, just briefly, but sort of add to sort of this whole story that I've been telling for the last couple of years about where we're headed. So when I look at the city's mission statement, which I love, and I've tied it into almost everything I've talked about, the idea of connecting people and building a positive image and having a sense of place, those are things that we can use our diversity to help leverage and advance. And so I'm going to use the word diversity in a couple different contexts today. Of course, as an architect, I have to start with our built environment. I think the American dream is a thing that has sort of led us astray because we kind of see us all arriving and converging at the same place with the White House and the black shutters and 1.7 kids and 2.7 cars and all the things that people imagine go into the American dream. And in fact, from the standpoint of diversity, I think we should be thinking different than that. And in fact, if you tell me this is the American dream, I want to get off. Because I really do want to talk about how architectural diversity is something that Hamilton has in spades, and it's a wonderful thing, and we can leverage it, and we can do it well. And if you read all the books on urban planning and all the books on design and diversity, and the best of all of those books is Jane Jacobs' book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, she said that our diversity and slow architecture, she called it, is what makes us great in terms of our cities. This is from one of her books. When we had the time, the collective motivation, and didn't have abundant economic resources, we created places that worked because we worked together on them, we worked on them continuously, and we proved them continuously. So what I take away from that is there is no snapshot architecture. There's no one period of style that's the one that we preserve forever. Architecture changes over time, buildings change over time, streets change over time, communities change over time, and we need to capture that and continuously work on it and not try to go back to any one particular snapshot in history. And so one opportunity that we had to actually fail in this regard was when we had the opportunity to pretty much rebuild this entire school district in about 3 years. And because of things like the standards from the state of Ohio, from the school design manual, from things like we need equity and equality across our city, we had the opportunity to do a really cookie-cutter approach to our district and succeed with equity, but fail miserably at diversity. And so to the credit of the leadership of this district, especially Larry Bowling, who's here, and Glenn Stitzinger, who's here, who led the Facilities Master Planning Committee, we put diversity and equity both on the top of our list, and it seems a little bit counterproductive to try to do both of those things, but in fact, that's what we did. And so we came up with a way to develop buildings that did produce equity from a program standpoint. And I don't know how many people know this, but every single one of our 8 elementaries does not differ from each other by 1 square foot. Not the same square foot, but there's exactly the number of square feet that are required by the state in each one of those buildings. But we looked at a way to make them different when it was important to make them different. Give them a brand, give them some character. And so when you take a picture of a school in this district, everybody knows which school it is. There are no cookie cutter schools in this district. So we made classroom wings and support service wings very similar, but we made the entries and the media centers of these buildings all very distinct and very unique. And it came out as something that you think would take a generation to generate, but we did it in about 3 years with a lot of good leadership. So every school in Hamilton has its own character, its own story, its own brand. And architecturally, it's a tapestry of buildings and a solution that, again, feels like a generation made it in a couple of years, and a lot of extra heavy work made it. And it's something to be really proud of as a city of Hamilton, having that kind of diversity match up with its history. Another kind of diversity is resource diversity. A lot of people think the downtown revitalization was the city, or was the core fund, or was one silver bullet. And I'm here to tell you it was not that at all. It took a lot of effort to sort of recover what we did. And here's the period of time in the 70s where we backed away from our diversity and tried to make all the buildings look modern and the same by putting single monolithic facades in all the buildings. So this was the 200 block of High Street in the 70s. And by the 2000s, the facade issue was only a minor problem. The major problem is these buildings were dark. They were empty. And there was no silver bullet to this. And the answer has been, or the outcome has been, that right now we have 100% occupancy in this block again, from about 2,000 square feet to 252,000 square feet occupied. And when I think about how that happened, I think about the creative hurdles, the financial hurdles, the operational hurdles, the zoning hurdles. It took different people and different resources every time we met one of those hurdles. And all of these people and all of these agencies in this list had something to do with that block being revitalized. And the Core Fund and the City of Hamilton are on that list, but they're actually minor players on that list. The Core Fund had something to do with 6,500 square feet of that 252,000 square feet of that block being revitalized. It was an important piece, but it was just a small piece. And it turned into something very much kind of the start of what happened on this block. But a lot of people then took the mantle from there and made it happen. And so this is the Historic Mercantile Building. Historic developers and Steve Kuhn made this project happen. And again, great diversity. This is the Art Space Building. Another organization from another part of the country came into town and made this happen. And then again, another piece of the solution. Some very, very high risk-taking entrepreneurs like Sherry Armstead and Sarah Valenningham lit up storefronts. Again, nothing to do with the Core Fund, nothing to do with the city. It was their own risk-taking and their own sort of belief in Hamilton that made that happen. And then a family that took this on completely on their own. No help from the city, no help from the Core Fund. They figured out how to do it, and they delivered. And when I look at that block today lit up every night, it's really amazing. And again, it was the resource diversity that we put behind it that made it happen, not any one agency. That's a big list. And you take anybody off that list and something doesn't happen good in that block. And then there's stakeholder diversity. We worked hard to reset this building, again, for the intense purpose of having it lit up again, having it occupied. But what happened is it became occupied with a creative class of young people that made a huge difference in downtown Hamilton. Had nothing to do with the bricks and mortar of the Journal News building. Had to do with the folks that were in there every day, the dancers, the performers, the musicians, the artists. When I look at a word cloud of diversity, I was trying to find out where it is that I think diversity can be leveraged in Hamilton. And the ones that in some of the smaller text around there are the three that I put in the box: problem solving, overcoming, and empowerment. Those are things that diversity can be leveraged to help our outcome as a community. This is one of my favorite photographs of all time. This is Mulberry Street in the Lower East Side of New York in 1900. Look at the street, look at the vendors, look at basically the living room of New York. There were waves of immigrants coming into New York in the period of 1850 to 1900 that were unprecedented in the history of the world. And the human diversity that caused is the great melting pot of America. And people don't know if the melting pot is the right concept, but it happened by necessity. It didn't happen by accident. You had waves of immigrants coming, Irish, German, East European Jews, Italians coming, and they were overlapping with each other. There were no neat boundaries of neighborhoods because the reason for that was almost a reason of necessity. There was no group that had the financial sustainability or the wherewithal to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. These folks all thought they landed in America to meet the American dream, but they had to really invent a way to survive and a way to be sustainable. And the community and the diversity actually became the way they did that. Different people had different skills, and they needed those skills. Everybody needed those skills, and they had to work together to do it. So there were sheer numbers that made the economics work, and sheer numbers that made the economics look like they couldn't possibly work. But it still happened. Living conditions were awful, but people barely lived in their domiciles, those tenement houses. They basically lived in the street, because the street was where everything happened. It's where you got your sustenance. It's where you did your work. It's where you helped others. It's where you wanted to be. And yes, racism and concern over immigration was just as vitriolic as it is today back then. Here's a cartoon from the New York newspaper that shows an Irishman and a Chinese person swallowing up Uncle Sam. It was just amazing. There were documents like this before there was Facebook, before there was internet, before there was cable news that said, "American citizens, we appeal to you in all calmness. It is not time to pause. Already the enemies of our dearest institutions, like the foreign spies and the Trojan horse of old, are within our gates. They are disgorging themselves upon us at the rate of hundreds of thousands every year. They aim at nothing short of conquest and supremacy over us." We were panicked about immigration. And yet we were the immigrants 10 years before that this was happening. So if you think things have changed or you think things are worse today than they used to be, that's not true. This is a constant in history. I look at try to study where in the world the political spectrum moves up and down. How do we swing in a pendulum? How do we change from the right to the left? What happens? And the fact is, it's always been here. And it's always been fringes. And in fact, political science says it's not a political spectrum. It's a 3-4-dimensional kind of thing going in all directions. And nobody can pin it down. And I agree with that. But what I think I've learned from doing a little bit of study on this is there hasn't been a change. This is really an historic constant. I mean, we've had these problems in the history of the world that go back to the beginning of man. Yes, we have cable news and we have Facebook now, but that may be sensationalizing what we're doing, and it sort of tries to drag us to the fringes, but I still think the spectrum of what our ideologies are as a people has never widened or narrowed. It's always been about where it is. So here's that DNA thing. What makes us sort of want to be separatists? What makes us want to group with people we're like? I don't know. I think, again, it's been the thread of every problem we've had as a civilization in history, especially when it comes to acceptance and tolerance. It's one thing to want to be with different groups of people. It's another thing not to accept or not to tolerate the other groups of people. And that's where we have most of our work to do. So it's in our popular culture. It's in our literature. It's in our history. And you go back to any time in our history, and those things are rampantly discussed as part of what we do. But what I'm here to say is I think if we organize around our diversity, because Hamilton has diversity, we can actually leverage that to do good. And I think we have. I think we've reached out to different groups and different people and different agencies with different mission statements, and we've made a difference. In 2013, we started meeting with a group of people every Thursday, and they were from all different organizations. And I can tell you, as getting to know them, they're from all different political spectrum philosophies. But we said, what would be the blue sky of big projects that would make a difference in Hamilton? And we listed 7 of them in 2013. And by 2016, 6 of them were knocked off the list. And 1 is still on our list to be knocked off. But it's amazing how that compromise and that decision to mix mission statements and to get out of our comfort zone actually make things happen in Hamilton. Something that the Greater Ohio Policy Center did a study of 24 cities in America. And Hamilton was one of them. And they gave Hamilton great remarks for accepting that no single entity has the resources to revitalize Hamilton, that resource diversity is a necessity in any successful revitalization of a traditional legacy city like Hamilton. And then to end here, I will tell you where I think the wheels leave the runway. This is an excerpt from a Hamilton High School seniors college application essay. And I'm going to read it because it's pretty impressive. "My city is a place where the population is very diverse. My high school is filled with a huge mix of students from many backgrounds, and it's clear that the administration does everything they can to ensure equality." Well done, John Wilhelm. "This environment has molded me into someone that treasures diversity and knows how vital it is in today's society. I'm a firm believer that racism and discriminatory ideas are learned behaviors, and without exposure to a diverse community, it can be a real problem for some people to be truly tolerant." Isn't that amazing? This country is submitting to the evil of polarization, and each day we take sides, we separate ourselves further. I will always fight for the equality of all people because I know it's right, and I know how much better this nation and world could be if we all had the same mindset. So I want to ask Tony Orr, is where on the state report card do we get credit for producing this kind of thought in our young people? It is amazing. It's a value proposition that I don't think we can put a value on because it's priceless. The idea that we live like that and we can leverage that even better, because we don't do it that well, but we're learning, is something to me that is something we really can take advantage of as a community, because we have that. And we have an urban, diverse population in our public schools, and that has a value that I can't measure. So what does success really look like? It's all these things. It's a puzzle of all of our differences actually working together and working. And it's hard work, and it's compromising work, but it's good work, and it has a good outcome. Thanks.
So I think you asked the question, Mike, when are people going to get tired of... I don't. I really enjoy hearing you speak, and I thank you so much for coming here and impacting our students in a very, very thoughtful way. So we really appreciate that. To our guests here, I want to thank you for your attendance. It was fun having you here, and I'm glad you got a little glimpse of all the good things that go on at Hamilton High School. Thank you so much for coming today, and thank you to our student leaders, and thank you to Mike Dingledine. Feel free to stick around. We have some wonderful food here still from two women in a kitchen, represented by a man. And it's wonderful, so feel free to hang out and enjoy part of your morning with us. Thank you so much. Have a good day.